It looks like Pam Bondi will likely get through. What is interesting, though, yesterday, and the New York Times wrote this, the Bondi hearing almost seemed like, in part, also a hearing on some of the more intemperate and troubling statements that the possible FBI director, Kash Patel, has said about the press, about political opponents, about enemies list. So a lot actually in Pam Bondi's hearings about Kash Patel.
Yeah. As you saw there in Ryan's report, Democratic Senator Alex Padilla of California pressed Pam Bondi on the issue of the 14th Amendment and birthright citizenship. Here is more of that exchange.
I gave an opportunity to study overnight. So can you tell me in this committee what the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment says?
Senator, I'm here to answer your questions. I'm not here to do your homework and study for you. If I am confirmed as Attorney General...
You're the one asking for a confirmation vote, ma'am.
Hey, you cut me off. Can I please finish?
What does the 14th Amendment say?
Senator, the 14th Amendment, we all know, addresses birthright citizenship. I've been a state prosecutor. I've been a state AG. I look forward to, even given your remarks today, working with you and the people of California if I am confirmed as the 87th Attorney General of the United States of America. I didn't take your homework assignment. I'm sorry. I was preparing for today.
So on the 14th Amendment, now you've testified repeatedly to this committee that you will uphold the laws of this country and defend the Constitution of the United States. Do you believe birthright citizenship is the law of the land, and will you defend it regardless of a child born in the United States, regardless of their parents' immigration status?
Senator, I will study birthright citizenship. I would love to meet with you regarding birthright citizenship. Can I answer the question?
Serve as the Attorney General of the United States, and you still need to study the 14th Amendment of the Constitution? That is not helping me have more confidence in your ability to do this job.
And Senator Padilla joins us now here on set in Washington. Senator, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
We obviously just played that exchange you had with the Attorney General nominee. After the hearings concluded, did you have any more or fewer reservations about her ability to serve in that post?
Look, a few more reservations. You saw that exchange. That's one of several issues that I personally raised that she either couldn't answer or wouldn't answer. And let me sort of level set, because I get it. Donald Trump was elected, so he's going to have a cabinet that aligns with his views. Policy differences is one thing. One of the big issues in the hearing yesterday was a concern about her willingness or ability to be independent of the President of the United States, because we saw what happened in his first term. You remember Pete Sessions, what happened when he got crossways with Donald Trump. We saw at the end of the first term, even Attorney General Barr getting a little crossways with Donald Trump. So how do we expect that she will or won't stand up to Trump when the Constitution of the United States would require it?
Now, there does seem to be, though, whip counts that the Pam Bondi will have the votes to become Attorney General. But there's more skepticism about Kash Patel, who Joe and I have been talking about all morning, seemed almost like a secondary figure in this hearing yesterday. Right. He, of course, will have his own hearing down the road. What concerns do you have about him, and do you think that enough Republicans share them?
Well, I think that is really at the root of all this. Attorney General nominee Bondi looks like she can count on the support of most, if not all, the Republicans. They do have a 53-vote majority, so they don't really need Democrats to confirm her. We're hearing there's reservations about Kash Patel. We don't know how many Republicans and how many Republicans would actually be willing to act on those concerns publicly, maybe even vote against him, as opposed to express concerns privately, but not be willing to stand up to Trump. So concerns about Kash Patel, his conspiracy theories, his enemies list, which does exist. You talked about it earlier in the program. It's not just out there publicly. It's in his book. It's a whole chapter. And the FBI director works within the Department of Justice, which is why it was so relevant in yesterday's hearing with Attorney General nominee Bondi. So time will tell. Will enough Republicans stand up to do their job on advice and consent and act on their concerns, or are they going to just prioritize loyalty to Donald Trump?
Well, Senator, let's turn now to the ongoing tragedy in your home state of California, these wildfires in the Los Angeles area. As you sat down on the break, encouraging news with the weather forecast. The winds perhaps have not been as fierce as feared. But tell us what you've seen. I know you've spent time there in these areas that have been ravaged by fire. What have you seen? What has happened?
Yeah, look, staying busy on both coasts, as you can understand, having had a chance to be in the Palisades over the course of the last week, in the Altadena, Pasadena area in the course of the last week. It's devastating. I mean, you see the visuals, and we've been seeing them all week long. What I don't think watching on television gives you an appreciation for is the scale of these fires. If you look at the acreage, the area burned, we're talking not just 6 fires, but combined 4 times Manhattan. So it's a huge event, a lot of heartbreak, people displaced, 24 at least perished in the fire. As search and rescue teams are out there visiting property by property, that toll is probably going to go up. We're getting a little bit of a break in the weather wind-wise, but still no precipitation in sight. So the dry conditions are going to continue, and we're going to have to continue to be vigilant in the weeks and months ahead.
And a very brief final question. Do you want Donald Trump, once he takes office, to visit California? Do you think that he will spearhead enough relief to the state that needs it?
Absolutely. I've joined with the governor, the mayor, a whole lot of officials, inviting him to come see firsthand, not just the impacted areas, but to meet with the families that have been impacted, just as he did when he was president in his first term when we had wildfires in the north. And let's not condition federal aid. Let's not play politics with the disaster that Californians deserve, just as we've supported other regions of the country in their time of crisis.
The Trump aide said that visit could come as soon as sometime next week. Democratic member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Alex Padilla of California. Senator, thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.